Bienvenidos a la segunda parte del Foro ARTBO 2018, que se titula La trama, la parcela, y en esta ocasión lo que vamos a tener es el modelo de entrevistas. Me permito hacer un poquito de darles un poco de información de por qué Katrina, O'Neill y Albertine están aquí conmigo. En esta entrevista vamos a hablar sobre ciertas estrategias para el soporte y el apoyo del arte contemporáneo y la producción cultural y de sentido en el Caribe. Creo que es muy importante en estas circunstancias porque siempre he entendido que el Caribe es de alguna manera el microcosmo, es un gran microcosmo. Entonces, vamos a manejar cómo ciertas estrategias de sustentación y soporte del arte de tipo regional se mantienen, se transforman, también cómo actuamos en esos marcos, y finalmente con un artista vamos a ver cómo se junta la voluntad institucional con la voluntad personal. Saying that, dicho esto, voy a introducir a nuestros participantes en la conversación de hoy. Tengo el grandísimo placer de contar con Albertine Kopp, que es la gerente del Caribbean Art Initiative, la iniciativa de arte del Caribe, con sede en Basilea, Suiza, con O'Neill Lawrence, que es curador de la National Gallery de Jamaica, la Galería Nacional de Jamaica, y con Katrina Coombs, que es una artista de origen jamaiquino que se encuentra en este momento, y gracias a la iniciativa de arte previamente llamada Davidoff, como Prince el artista, a.k.a. Davidoff Art Initiative, hoy es residente en Flora Arts y Natura. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros dialogando. El formato de este encuentro es una entrevista, pero es una conversación privada que accede a lo público porque ustedes están acá, de la cual ustedes pueden participar en cualquier momento. Otra vez va a ser conducida en inglés y hay dispositivos de traducción simultánea para su entrega en la entrada de este lado. ¿Okay? Pueden en cualquier momento hacer uso de ello. Okay, I'm going to start with Albertine. Albertine Kopp has been in the latest year one of the key figures in the art of the Caribbean. And by the Caribbean, I mean the Caribbean wherever it is, because we handle an expanded notion of the Caribbean. She has become a key person in this, not only because her commitment in terms of professional work, but also in terms of her emotional commitment to the place, the region. Podemos parar las diapositivas, dejar la otra y nada más proyectar las de Katrina cuando le toque a Katrina. Okay. I have always wondered, Albertine, that if you ask a person from Cartagena or a person from Suriname, what is the Caribbean or what is the Caribbean for you, the answers may differ a lot, may distance themselves a lot. So I decided to ask a person from Switzerland with thousands and thousands of emotional strings attached to the Caribbean, what is your notion or emotional definition or more rational definition of what is the Caribbean? Ay, durísimo.
So thank you very much, Sara. Thank you first of all for inviting us to the panel discussion, for being here in Bogota, being a host, for having a relationship with Flora since over 3 years for establishing future relationship with the region. We look very much forward to look at that. What is the Caribbean? It has been a wonderful journey since over 6 years to go to a region that is actually affixed only with a single name, and that is a geographical region that is around or in the Caribbean Sea. It's a very loaded political terms, and we could actually speak about 2 hours about the Caribbean, which we don't want to. We want to look forward to a future. We have done a lot of research, and maybe I go what Sara said, what is for me the Caribbean on an emotional side, because the Caribbean is much more than that. I try to put it together, but it's impossible because it's about 2,500 images I have on my phone, and everything was crashing down to show you about 250 people over 6 years that have worked together, hand by hand, from Switzerland, over UK, over New York, over Costa Rica, over Colombia, over Jamaica, Trinidad, Curacao, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and that's only to name a few of them. It's a different culture, it's different languages, but we all want the same. We want to support culture, we want visibility, and we want to create something that is long-term for the culture, and it is going to remain after us. So that's for me one of the things, but it's of course, as you said, very emotionally loaded, since we have been attached to this project.
Yep, from a territorial accident to an emotional responsibility, this has been, as you said, a journey. But how you characterize all these 6 years, and why the Caribbean?
So the journey started, and I remember very well, it was actually with, we have to say we're not totally neutral because Sara is part of my board, so if I say shit, I'm gonna go really bad afterwards, I'm really sorry. But the journey started with Sara Hermann in Santo Domingo with a dinner. It was end of January. I was not even an official employee by Davidoff, the company. I was randomly between 2 jobs in New York, going down to see the region. Myself, I have no direct link with the Caribbean. I have no family. Even if I would say over the 6 years, all my family is now there on an artistic level. It has been because the Davidoff, the company, is based in Santiago. So the headquarters is the Caribbean region. As a company, we looked into it, what is possible to help for the future of this region. And of course, it has been art and culture is underestimated and on a state level undersupported. Because you have priority in life. For the Caribbean, a priority is tourism in first line before art. So as a private company, we decided to step in and help artists, culture in general also with grants and curators to give them visibility, but also something that is very important, as we know, is mobility. A lot of people doesn't have the possibility to travel, and that was our first goal. This is why we did actually this idea of the whole residency program that is more and more now hype nowadays.
Yeah, this is a very important thing that you mentioned, that meeting, dinner / drinks happened on January 24th in a very public space in the Dominican Republic. But when we sat to talk at the beginning, I said, okay, there's this huge international company that comes here and wants to do something. What they want out of it? I'm always suspicious of everything that's a bad trait of the, I think, of life. I became very suspicious, but suddenly she told me, we don't want a collection. We just want to do things, and we want to mobilize, we want to provoke. Why you didn't think on a collection at the beginning, or always?
There's there's different models for that's a more general question, for company to engage.
Yeah.
You have companies that are going to do a collection, others that are going to just give grants or prize, and another one that is going to be really engaged. And I think at the time, the Davidoff had a CEO that was himself very much engaged in the arts, looking towards, and it's on a human level. If you decide to be with your generation and to engage with the living artist, of course, it's more about giving a residency and not having something that is going to be a library of, especially doing a collection in that sense, would be for Davidoff bringing the works to Switzerland. So it would also bring like the works outside the Caribbean. So our idea is not to export and to take away the arts from the Caribbean, but to give actually all like the possibility to the artists who are based in the Caribbean to work with it and then like from there grow.
Right now you are in the midst of a transition. I believe on the productivity of transitions because wrongs are disarmed, possibilities are built. It's that time of uncertainty where you are like in this moving ground, but that is very productive. How is the transition that you are experiencing between Davidoff Art Initiative and Caribbean Art Initiative? Can you tell us a little bit about each one and how those two are different in terms of platforms for Caribbean art?
So there is like, it's very simple. The idea is to take over what like Davidoff has generously built and like funded for the past 6 years, and to continue in a non-for-profit, non-commercial, long-term organization, the Caribbean Art Initiative, that will remain as such, still headed by myself, and also supported with all the artists that participated in the past at the Davidoff Art Initiative. So the network itself remains totally the same. In terms of partnerships and main goal, it's remaining the same. It's the same region. We want to be global. It's about mobility. It's about visibility. So we remain on a basis of residency partnerships. And one of the main important also pillar next to residencies is ideas. Under ideas, we understand a kind of a think tank for the Caribbean region. It happens more and more, but it's not really like in a format where people know how you find it. It's a bit all over the place. We want to help the visibility here again. So be, for example, present at ARTBO, or be present at ARTBO in Buenos Aires, to have more connection and more like representation of the Caribbean in general.
Yes, I remember that January 24th. And I do remember that date very well because it was 2 days before my birthday. Not that that matters. And you, Andres Santo, and you asked me like, what do you think the region needs? And I had actually a scripted response, but not because of lack of response, but because of I wanted to be precise. I didn't know I was going to work for them. With them. And I say mobility, visibility, education, and networks. In this moment of transition, do you think this has been accomplished? Like the missions that, or the ideas that we planted that same, and that's the date? Yeah.
I would say we're at the beginning. We realize and we learned a lot about the last 6 years. I might think I learned more from the Caribbean than the Caribbean learned from the program. It has been really a great journey. And there is one reason why there's a transition, and one reason there's a Caribbean Art Initiative is we strongly believe the work is not finished and we want to continue, and this is why we take it as a journey. So the visibility is maybe starting to be there, but it's for what we want to have far, far away from where it should be.
I'm very curious about that pattern of learning that you just described. And I think it's not that radical, as you put it. I think we have learned a lot from that because since while you put a focus on us, we decided to challenge you. So it's a struggle and it's a negotiation, but a very productive one, I believe. What are your plans in in a short-term period, I should say? Because then we have to start defining what is short and what is long and what is medium. But because time and space can be very flexible and where we've come from. So what are your plans in short term? Define short first. No,
Okay, short.
I'm just kidding.
There is nothing except like me maybe not missing my flight tonight because I'm always far away, too short at the airport. But everything we do has to have a long-term impact. There's nothing like that is going to be short-term. There's no grants that we're going to give to an institution that is not going to be follow-up. There is no residency, as I just was debriefing with Katrina, that is only short-term of 3 months and she's going to go off. As I was just telling her that she can bother me at any time for any help, as I'm happy to hear from her. There is, for us, I think, no short-term relationship.
I wasn't expecting that.
I love to surprise you.
Yeah, she always does. But you know what? And what about like plans? Like, what are you going to do? I mean, in 6 months.
So Katrina is our last artist in residence with Davidoff Art Initiative here in Bogota. Oneika Russell is our last artist in residence in Residency Unlimited in New York, and we have the pleasure to work right now, and he's very close to me because he's in Basel in residency with Chus Martinez as Giscard Bouchot from Haiti. There are several presentations. One of the most important one is, of course, the Venice Biennale that is coming up, I think, more or less than I should be at 6 months. Haiti will have a presentation. Grenada will have a presentation. It's coming more and more. So it's definitely to have a presence and to be able to continue the dialogue in such an international and global atmosphere, such as like the Venice Biennale, where is a discourse. And in the next 6 months is also to finalize all the partnerships for the Caribbean Art Initiative, to also finalize all the funding for the program, because this is the main issue and the future for the next 6 months.
I should have started with this question because I'm very curious, even though we're friends for a long time now, how you end up here.
In Bogota?
No, among us.
I know, because you adopted me, all of you. It has been a wonderful
really,
journey.
Professionally, how do you end up here?
It's because of the residencies. It's really randomly. It has been a total random journey for me. It's not because I was bored in Europe and I decided to look at the other side of the world. It's not because I decided to look at a different region where the sun is shining in January and I didn't want to have the gray weather in Berlin. It has nothing to do with that. It's because of residencies. I was always very much interested in the international and cultural exchange among artists, curators, philosophers, to be able to also work with my generation, to support my generation and a live generation. Like, it's not in terms of age, it's really more about being alive and not alive. So this is actually the main axe that touches me with the program at Davidoff. And I learned then from scratch.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Yeah, I always suspected that. O'Neill, hi.
Hi.
As I said before, I have always thought of the Caribbean as a microcosm of the world in many ways. I do believe that we have helped to define the notion of trans everything, flexible, malleable, redefine being flexible, redefine resilience. There's this Puerto Rican lawyer, Elizabeth Jean-Pierre, that once said that in the Caribbean, resilience is not necessarily a term. She said that resilience means bounce back to normal. What is our normal? So I think we have been very responsible of defining other types of normal. Not normal, I would prefer. But we define notions of adapting and resisting in many, many ways. You are an artist, a curator, an activist, many things. How do you juggle with those too many roles?
Wow, it was interesting that you just.
This one, I think this one is
Louder, better? Okay, it's interesting that you actually use that quote about resilience and the bouncing back to normal. I think that it's in terms of being flexible, in terms of that defines us as, and I'm using the term Caribbean to talk about all of us who, from the first encounters were changed as a people. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, almost not just the countries that touch the Caribbean Sea and the countries that are inside the Caribbean, but also the countries that have been influenced by what happened in the Caribbean. So I'm almost talking about the entire Western Hemisphere and the diaspora from the Caribbean. I think that what I have had to do, in terms of moving between the identities of, curator, artist, activist, it's not so much a juggling performance. It's more that I have had to, whether for various reasons and times in my own career, had to make certain things recede and certain things move to the foreground. So there are times when my artistic career was at the forefront, but as my own concerns have changed and my own attitudes and my experiences, as well as as well as the changes in the dynamic around me, institutionally with artists and so on, it's been a thing where, or a situation more accurately, where I have the three things looking at: artist, curator, activist, and certain things that I always tend to be able to keep two things in the foreground. So right now, at the stage I am at, and the things that are important to me in terms of the development of art, curating, artist initiatives and so on within the Caribbean, my artistic career has had to recede for the last almost 4 years now.
Is that hard?
It's extremely difficult.
What do you miss the most?
Well, I miss... I'm not really sure how to express that, because I can't say I miss the creativity, because I view all of my curatorial work as a creative enterprise. So even though I'm working with other artists and working with telling a story or trying to tease out particular dialogues that are between works and so on, I feel that it is a different portion of my artistic being that is at play there. There's another portion when I'm more concerned about things that are much more personal, even though, to be honest, I take all of these concerns very personally, especially in terms of being an activist, because I believe in creating equity, I believe in creating opportunity, with all of the stakeholders within our communities. So it's a thing right now where I am kind of committed to a particular set of goals, I haven't given up on my artistic career, but in terms of the things that I think are necessary for, and I know this is going to sound naive and kind of cliched, but the greater good, for everyone else, I think it's really important that, you sometimes have to be able to step out of yourself and defocus from the individual and think about the collective. So in that respect, it's been easier for me to think about the curatorial as well as the activist portion of my being. But the artistic one is never far behind. Whoa, that's loud.
Juliana, por favor. Sí, es muy alto.
Yeah. And to be honest, they're not all separate entities. Everything kind of interchanges. So even though in terms of my own personal work, there are aspects of it that I think influence everything that I do. So that's kind of the long rambling answer to that one.
Yeah, you just mentioned, I am going to scream to be able to
There we go.
be heard. Thank you. You just mentioned a particular set of goals, and I wondered, what are your goals right now?
Wow.
This is becoming philosophical.
My goals right at this moment, being able to help the Caribbean Art Initiative grow. That's one of my main goals. But I am thinking very much in terms of my own context in Jamaica. I think it's very important to create a more dynamic cultural and artistic ecology, because one of the it was the theme of the Tilting Axis conference, which the three of us were at earlier this year, about the cultural ecology, about the different factors and agents that interact, influence, support, get support from each other. Within my own context, I've been trying to see if there are ways to build capacity within Jamaica and capacity within the cultural sector, because I think that it will make it a healthier environment. There will be less dependence on particular institutions if there are more spaces with people who have the experience and people who have the knowledge base to be dynamic and be able to jump back to the normal whenever they get hit down and so on. I think that's one of my main goals right now. It's something that I've been trying to work on for some time. That's really in terms of, we don't have right now, there are only a handful of people who have real curatorial skill in Jamaica, and it's something that I want to change as a reality. I want there to be more people out there who can do things, because the reality is that we sometimes, one of the things that I was kind of talking to Albertine about earlier is that in the Caribbean, and I'll use that term, we tend to complain a lot about what we don't have, what is not there, and
everywhere.
I grew up in a very kind of pragmatic environment where it's like, okay, stop wasting time and complain. Try and do something about it. If you can't do anything about it, don't complain. You have to be an active person, an activist then. So what I'm really trying to do is to create a framework to build that kind of capacity, so that there are more people. If God forbid my interest and my concerns might change, there need to be other people who can step into the framework and have the same concerns, the same kind of experience, well, maybe not the same experience, but be able to build on whatever is there already and move towards the future of what we need in the Caribbean.
And I think just about complaints, we're not going to complain. We say we're...
Don't complain.
I'm not complaining. No, I think something that has been very good is a residency program, because it brings you definitely also out of your comfort zone. And you always realize, and I think a bit afterwards, this is where I pass the micro back. I think it goes then to Katrina, the question.
Yes.
When you leave your country,
Yeah, go ahead.
When you leave your country, what do you realize, and what did you realize coming to Bogota? And I know that you're going back. Unfortunately, the residency is ending on Monday. But did you miss something from Jamaica?
Oh, Euclides, it's off. Okay, you can take this. This is very. Okay.
Okay. In terms of coming here, the culture is diversely different from that of in Jamaica. If I'm to say I miss anything, it's really the food. But aside from that, that's perhaps the only thing. But being here, I think I was able to be free, to explore my practice in a manner that I wasn't able to in Jamaica. And it's not to say that there aren't opportunities there. It's just that when you get caught up in paying the bills, you have a tendency, even similarly, Onil and I, we both curate exhibitions, and getting caught in the admin is a balance that you have to kind of try to figure out, okay, do I want to be an artist? Do I curate? How do I balance the two? And I've had to at one point stop curating, and I've decided, I was once known only as Katrina Coombs from the Cage Gallery, not necessarily Katrina Coombs the artist. And in the last, I think, 3 years, I've just been focusing on my practice and expanding on it, exploring it, and I was really able to dive into it and really identify what I want to bring out of my works and where I really wish to take it beyond that of even the comfort zone of Jamaica, because I've realized that we're very traditional in terms of the artworks that we put forward and even how we present the artworks. And then coming here and realizing, okay, I explored performance at one point in time 5 years ago, and I really loved it. And then when I returned back to Jamaica, it was almost like, okay, this is not the place to do this. And then being able to come here and have that space to really dive into it and say, okay, I can incorporate that performative aspect with my forms, my sculptural forms, which that's what I've mainly been focusing on, just creating textile fabrics, sculptural pieces.
So let me ask you something, since we are doing this juggling thing. Albertine was telling you about what did you miss, what did you bring to Bogota. What are you taking to Kingston from Bogota?
What am I taking? Wow. At this current moment, I've actually started an initiative back home, Black Mango Consultants, where we are aimed at promoting younger artists, attempting to identify unconventional spaces, the white box gallery, to exhibit, because we don't really have many galleries there back home. And being able to have my own freedom and understand how empowering that is for an artist, to be able to work on your own practice and to give that back to those who are coming up in the industry, and to help to be their voice. Because as an artist, I think one of the main things we are is a voice for something that's not necessarily spoken to or not given the wider platform. And I think in curating and in putting on programs such as residences, exhibiting, that allows us to give to them a voice. And I want to just share that experience with them.
That's very important, because, and this is something I want to confess publicly to you, because, and she got scared, finally. No, I met Marisabel Rueda and La Usurpadora through Albertine. It had to, has many like layers of understanding, that she's so into the process of completing an idea of the Caribbean that I hadn't think about it. So it is important to have you as a as a cable that connects. And I'm very happy to do so, and very happy to be also in a country with such a incredible Caribbean and coastline that brings so much to the equation. Going back to O'Neill, everybody in their lives have these decision-making processes. Yep. All your roles, every one of your roles, that require decision-making. I'm going to actually refrain only to the professional part of it, because decision-making is not only challenging, it's at least demanding. It is very difficult to get in a common ground, even with your family. Maybe sometimes with the family it's worse, but being in the belly of the beast, and by the belly of the beast I mean the institution and the organization. Are you neutral? Do you believe in neutralness, if there's something like that? What do you think requires to take decision, for example, in the curatorial in countries like us, that they're at least precarious?
Okay, large question. All right, the interesting thing for me is that I think that I don't really believe there's such a thing as neutrality, to be perfectly honest. But I also believe that at times, a lot of us in the cultural sector, a lot of us who are engaged with the arts, who are passionate about the arts, we tend to view the word compromise as a dirty word. And I think that there is, I personally don't think compromise is a bad thing. It depends on what you're compromising on. I think that one of the main things that all of us need to be able to do is to keep in our sights the bigger picture, to keep the macrocosm, if I want to go back to that and that set of analogies, to be aware of what the ultimate goal of our roles, of our institutions, what those ultimate goals are, and think about the fact that other people have goals too, the people that we want things from, like funding, and general support. Everybody has a particular goal, and the only way that we will ever be able to all achieve what those goals are is if we are able to give a little in what we want, and they are also able to give a little. It might not be a 50-50 kind of breakdown. It might be something where, it's 60-40, even 30-70. But even if you're on the side only receiving 30, you really need to be able to being able to make that compromise and that decision needs to be part of the bigger picture. It needs to still propel you forward to that ultimate goal. I think a lot of us I'm firmly within an institution. A lot of us within institutions, we have to think about the health and longevity of our institutions, the future of our institutions. And in that instance, or those instances, we all have to make particular compromises, because we all have to think about what is important to us. If it is no longer important to us, then the compromise doesn't make sense anymore. But I do believe that, as I said, it goes back to what I was saying before when you're asking me about goals. We all have goals. I have particular goals. I have a particular vision. I hope that vision is shared by other people. And if that vision is shared, then I know I'll have the support to move forward. If that vision is not shared, it will be a harder process. But I still believe in moving forward towards creating, and I know this sounds a little naive sometimes, but creating a bit more equity within the artistic communities that we have, because I grew up in an artistic community. I grew up, my father was an artist, but he was an artist in a community that was relegated to a particular role in the Jamaican artistic landscape. And when I started working for the institution, it was one of the things that I was always aware of what my institution's goals were and are, but it's always something that was here, that was kind of like not too far away from me supporting my institution's goals, to have that as something that I want the institution to champion as well. So that's, I think, answering the question, I hope.
I hope so.
And I have a question. I do it again. For you know, Sarah, you were saying also to O'Neill like about neutral, how you keep neutral.
I avoid neutral. I am not neutral. I'm never neutral. I have a very specific set of ideological standpoints where I stand very firmly on and act upon them. I cannot be neutral in a world that is falling into pieces. So I can't. And no, I don't keep neutral. Everything that what I am is aware of what I do. And everything that I do is truly thought of, even though it doesn't look like, but it is. Compromise, as you said, is a word that is so ambivalent, so ambivalent, that I'd rather use the word commitment. And even though that commitment is in a short term, because I do believe in short-term commitments, course, marriage, things like that. So, but exactly. Give me a second. Let me explain that part. Let me explain that part. No. When the institution of marriage was designed or thought of, people only lived 35 years. So until death do us apart meant like 5 years of a coexistence, no more than that. And that is clarified. So I go back to the subject. O'Neill, as I said before, has too many hats. Not too many, but so many hats. Like the curator, the activist, the cultural worker, the problem solver, the firefighter. If you have also you have the ability maybe to have the perfect response for this. If you have to define a platform or an initiative, an ideal initiative or platform for the arts in any given place, not necessarily the Caribbean or any given like community, what would it have? What would it be? And please think big.
Okay, you said think big. I think that the ideal initiative is one that creates a more connected community. And I don't mean a more connected community in the island, I mean a more connected community in the world. I think that the ideal initiative is one that can create experiences. I mean, in my own life and career, I have been very, very fortunate to have a lot of diverse experiences, a lot of diverse places. I mean, even here now, this is my first time in Colombia, my first time to Bogota, first major art fair, and already my mind is buzzing with possibilities. I think that the real, an initiative that can create connections, move people around, help create a cohesive community. I think that's the thing, because creatives, all creatives need a community. I mean, you can't exist for too long in a vacuum. I think that it's very unhealthy. I think that for me, something that has a worldwide reach, that is what we need to pick. I mean, of course, we all need funding, we all need, materials, we all need spaces to work in, but community is the most important thing, and it's the most vital thing for our growth as a creative sector, and our further integration into our societies, and actually I think for the benefit of everyone, I think that the creative world needs to be further integrated into the practical, pragmatic world. We need to all, I think an initiative that can keep creating connections where there aren't connections, that's what is, I mean, that for me is what would be the ideal initiative. I mean, it's community, growing the community, diversifying the community, and making sure that the community is aware of its importance and each individual's importance within that space.
Going back to Katrina, and you mentioning the idea of community, a community as an extensive thing, like a malleable, extensive thing. I think of your residency at Flora, and I always thought you were a match made in heaven.
Why?
Do you think, and this is the question, no, I thought you always, I saw you work and I said, okay, this belongs there. She needs to go there. Do you think I thought of that? I don't want you to get into my head, but I just wanted to tell you, do you think it's because of your work carries a sense of emotional ties, which can be kind of a universal language, or do you believe it's something that can be called universal amongst everyone, or that this culture have shaped what we are? My questions are very long. Again, why? I thought of that because of your work, seeing your work, feeling your work. Do you think you are a match made in heaven? Back to marriage.
Wow. Being here has opened me up to a lot, to explore a lot culturally, spiritually. My work is both universal and culturally. I would think it's kind of a mixture of nature versus nurture, where we naturally, my works are about the feminine, the woman, the womb. And universally it is, as you said a while ago, you threw me off. But as a woman, we're all women, we go through the same things. We go through similar things. No matter how little or large the experiences are, we will experience it no matter where we are. And culturally, we're pretty much nurtured based upon our environment and this notion of the maternal figure and who we are, how we carry ourselves. And I think being able to come here in Colombia, in Jamaica, fiber craft, it's really just kind of more tourist-based thing. It's really a deep cultural, spiritual, ethnic background that's really celebrated in that medium. But coming here and then seeing all of these very different ethnic groups and how they use fiber and how fiber becomes a part of their life, it's a part of their existence, they live through it, it breathes their energy, their life. And being able to understand, okay, I'm not in this little shell that I thought I was in, because in Jamaica, I'm not here. I mean, there are 3 main textiles and fiber artists there so it's not as if these techniques are learning or using fiber and fabric was something that was taught to me by my parents or grandparents, but then understanding that I have this spiritual connection to it. And coming here and seeing how it relates to the culture in Colombia has really impacted me. It has really impacted my practice as I go forward with the work.
In your artist statement, you talk about the social insecurities and the turmoil that every woman faces today, either in Jamaica or Dominican Republic or Bogota or everywhere. Do you think that with your artwork you can create a repercussion about that issue or those issues, because there's a lot of issues?
Yeah. I'm not sure if repercussion is really the term that I'd want to use.
Use the term you want to use.
Or I've not really explored it in the manner of a repercussion, but really this is something that is happening. It is constant. Our body is constantly changing. It's constantly evolving as we see our cycle. Whether if you're having a child, how it affects us emotionally. It affects us physically. Sometimes we are even an external being to ourselves because of the womb. And then just, yeah. But being able to, I think I lost the question.
No, okay. How do you think your work reproduces your ideas?
It's really speaking to the effects.
Okay.
It's really giving a voice to the experiences, and where we don't necessarily speak to them vocally. It's normally conversations that are considered to be taboo. It's if you're speaking about your menstrual cycle, everybody begins to cringe, or if you're speaking about after birth, or even just the idea of giving birth, and this is something that's very beautiful. It's that which gives life, and bringing a voice to that and bringing it forward is something that's beautiful and should be celebrated. And I think that's kind of what I'm attempting to bring forward into the work, and that it is okay to feel the way you feel when you feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I say your work is at the same time engaging and intimate. But at the same time, I think these two ideas of engage and intimate are intention all the time in your work. Do you agree with me?
It is intentional. For me, it's very deep, it's very emotional, it's very spiritual, and I see myself as a silent, rebellious person. I'm not a vocal one, but I do let my work speak for me. And I just think there's so much that happens, and even with working with fiber, what happens is when you're creating, you're like lost in a completely different world, and you're almost going within yourself. And then the fibers themselves, they capture that energy and they bring that forward.
It's very interesting, because I also find not only the idea of the manufacture or the color or the intertwining of threads, but I also find a kind of a language, like some the cryptic language in this kind of pieces.
There is a language. I think what happens with the pieces is that they speak the truth to that which may not be able to speak to vocally or verbally. I'm not.
I am going to ask you three, all you three. I'm going to ask something. I had a surprise question that I actually told them before, so I'm changing it. So I'm changing it because I believe that so much has come out during this conversation that I believe. The surprise question was about transnationalism and how do they define transnationalism to a live rabbit. Yes, it's just a boy's thing, metaphor, but no. Now the question is, in terms of your cultural work, your artistic practice, and your connection maker practices, what is truth? Thank you, Katrina. No, you can't. Well, she can start.
You want to
She's more prepared to answer that right away.
Look at my face and you'll know what truth is right now in terms of that question. Truth, I think that's one that's very difficult because everybody's truth is different, to be perfectly honest.
But in terms of our professional fiction making work.
In terms of our work, what is truth? I believe truth is a commitment to an ideal. I think truth is maintaining that commitment no matter what happens. I think truth is, in a way, not losing focus, never lying to yourself, never losing awareness of what is happening. I think your truth needs to be your truth needs to be something that is informed. Your truth needs to be something that is not carved into stone. I mean, I know it sounds weird that I'm talking about truth being malleable, but truth needs to be malleable. I think your truth needs to be flexible. I think truth in the cultural sector, truth in what we do as connectors, as artists, as curators, as activists, truth needs to be something that is always not only true to you, but true to those around you, as in truth comes from being connected. Truth comes from connectedness. If you are disconnected from everything, then I think it's difficult to find that truth in what you intend to do. Can't believe I answered that.
Okay, truth pretty much is that which you make it, but it's really being honest to yourself. Knowing what it is that you want to do, not being blindsided by all the noise that is around you and going for it. And once you are able to be true to yourself, I think then you can be true to everybody else that is around you. And just focus and share that. And once you find your own truth, you're honest with yourself, and in being honest with those who are around you, can then better help them. And you can help them to find their own voice, their own vision, and push them forward as you also push yourself back.
Please stitch that one onto my answer, because that was really good.
I think they're very well, like, it would be nice to also know what you think about that, Sarah.
Yes.
And for
Don't answer
myself,
my question with a question, please.
for myself is just two words that sums up very well what Katrina and O'Neill said. It's actually passion and integrity.
For me, truth and awareness have a very strong connection. You can only understand truth by being aware, by being conscious of everything that is in your context and everything that is around. And I take this thought to say something that I believe is very important here. I believe in place. I believe on the effect of place and time in everything that we do. That's why I think of awareness as one of the most valued faculties that we can have. And that's why I think we have to think about this moment as a pivotal moment. That's a very important moment where with everybody connects and reunites. And I'm talking about reuniting, thinking in La Usurpadora and Caribbean Art Initiative and the National Gallery of Jamaica and Centro León and Flora, and being connected. With that thought, I would like to pass the mic to you if you have any questions, either to the artist or the curator or the miracle maker here. You don't have any questions? Huh. Were we that clear over there?
Also in Spanish, we take questions.
And we take questions in Spanish, so don't worry. Ay, no, Dios mío.
I'm going to practice my second language. I'm from Ecuador. I'm an artist, and I was wondering if Ecuador is considered the Caribbean.
Well, I'm going to answer that one
You
first.
I want to answer that too.
Part of my definition of Caribbeans and Caribbean, the first, the encounter happened in the first encounter between the West and the further West.
Encounter. He's being silly.
Was within the Caribbean per se. that space that can be narrowly defined as Caribbean. But for me, I think much more broadly about the region, because when I think about Caribbean, as I said, I think about the diaspora. I think about all the connections that we have. I think about all the places that have been impacted by what has happened within that narrowly defined region. So yes, I include Ecuador in my definition. I include Chile in that definition. I include this hemisphere, frankly, in that definition, because it's hard for me to think about the Caribbean in a narrow, as narrowly defined by the lines on a map, because that's not who we are anymore. We can't be that. We are connected everywhere, and I think that, the diaspora, especially for Jamaicans, for a lot of people that live within a lot of the smaller Caribbean islands, the diaspora is worldwide for us. So as far as we're concerned, we're connected with everywhere. And when I think about the Caribbean, when I try to conceptualize Caribbean, I try never to be narrowly defined by that geographical map. I try to think about the emotional, the social connections, the spiritual connections, because they're all there. If you take the time to look, you'll see all of the linkages that we have. So I think about the Caribbean going back to Europe, going back to Africa. I don't believe in closing your definitions down, because you narrow your sphere of thought, and you narrow the possibilities that you can have in terms of whatever it is that we're doing or exploring. So.
And now
Hello,
just to give you one example, we had also Oscar Santillan. Yeah, he came in residency with us.
I had a question also. I guess it's most logic to also to Albertine Kopp. But obviously the foundation has a lot of impact on the different artists that come in residency. But what do you feel has been the biggest impact on the region of the Caribbean? Because obviously you're focusing on a region. So what has been the biggest impact you feel on the region over the past years?
I think, to take Sarah's word, it's having this. It's a neutral impact coming from the outside. I would say, as I'm myself an outsider, I'm also based in Switzerland. It's giving this, it's connecting the artists between each other. And because I'm not based within the island, it's everyone, thanks God, accept me when I arrive, because I don't belong to anyone. So that has been a very big impact that we have made with the program. Is Katrina knows that she can contact me anytime when she needs something in Curacao. If she has an idea or a project in Limon in Costa Rica, if there's something in Cuba tomorrow. So that has made the difference. It's a bit of a hotline for the Caribbean.
Like that idea of a hotline. I think we should implement that. There's another question here, please.
Well, Katrina wants.
Yeah, she's going to say something. Give me 1 sec. Sí, está bien.
I think one of the main things with Davidoff and what she has done is she's connected all of us together, and not only just as one unit, but she's also taken us outside of our own little circle, our own little box, out of the Caribbean, out of our own little island of Jamaica, and bringing us. So I think she's just been able to be our connection and bring us to the world, pretty much.
Sorry, just to quickly add also, that goes back to what I was saying about the ideal thing, and the most important thing is the creation of those connections. So, thank you.
Hi. I'm just very curious and can't help being critical, having this relationship between Davidoff being a luxury brand, very well known in the world for tobacco and fragrances. I'm very curious about the luxury notion and how you connect with artists, as I guess you see art as a luxury, and how do you think Katrina's work is related to luxury as just besides the object of itself, of being just an object of luxury?
Yeah. You mean the ethical implications of that?
Ethical and
Yeah.
philosophical.
Okay. No, it's very,
of
very clear.
Brands being related to artists in the world.
You have, I think it's always depend on how you translate it. You have brands such as like Louis Vuitton, who are doing a foundation and building a Frank Gehry museum in in Paris. Then you have others that are going to design, like I think it's Moët de Chandon bottles, that are going to work towards the product with the artist. And in our side, like I would say with Davidoff, we have nothing really that we cross in terms of luxury, because we have no influence of the like Katrina's production. She applied with a proposal that is not about like the link that she's going to have with Davidoff, but it's a link that she's going to have with Flora. So it's really about her artistic production. And she is totally free in the 3 months, and she can really say it also herself, to do and also change the proposal. So if you were legally seen, not a foundation has a status, but if it's easier to like for people to like visualize it, we did work as a foundation. So really like philanthropic. And no, I think art, it's really what we said also today. It's all those words. It's about community, about connecting, about sharing. So we don't see art as a luxury business.
And no, and let me, well, que ella le puede dar pero déjame decir algo. I'm going to say something else so you understand me. Okay, I'm going to say something else that I believe is, I think your question is very important because you have to think about the ethical implications of you being involved with a producer of what may have been thought of not only a luxury item or a vice. But I come from a land of tobacco workers and tobacco producers, and for them it's a form of life. It's embedded in our DNA. We were talking before about the creation of cultural centers from that, because one of the practices that the tobacco actually provoked was the reading and like interconnecting communities, rural communities. And yes, there was, I think it was in the last ARTBO that I was like a speaker, that Octavio Saya particularly asked me, how do I sleep at night? And I say very well, because I take pills and I actually have a very clear conscience of what we are doing. No, I am sure, even though it's a luxury brand, but because it is, even though we don't look as it like it, but it's creating infrastructure much needed in our space. So I take that help and I contribute to that. That's
because
what
I think it's a very good initiative, and I myself have taken advantage of it by seeing Katrina's work and going to Florida as a spectator. But aren't you afraid sometimes the nature of artists that you take in your scholarships, what they're going to say or what they're going to produce that could go sideways with your initiative?
No, I think no, and you shouldn't be afraid. It's very important. It's based on the truth, what we said, what we look into the truth. It's based on a discussion, And being afraid mean we would have something to hide. And we have, first of all, we have nothing to hide. It's open to discussion. Then we are like very open with the artists. We have worked with artists also. It's actually not like Katrina, for example, going to Florida, but we had also like artists, non-Caribbean, going to the Dominican Republic that did some critical works with Debate. They went there. This was more like on a critical age, and it's about having an open discussion.
But also, I think that one of the important things that with the Davidoff Art Initiative, as it stood, was the concept of freedom for the artists, because the whole point of the initiative is to create a platform, not to control the platform or to confine the platform. So even if the artists themselves are being critical of Davidoff, that's not something that we would necessarily, I think, have a problem with. I think the reality is that the whole point of it is to create the platform, give the freedom and give the exposure, and whatever comes from it is what should come from it.
Yes, and in that note, you want to say
I just want to I want to add to this, as an artist who received a residency from Davidoff, at no point in time the actual role of Davidoff in terms of it being this very, in terms of what it produces, it never affected what I was coming here to do, who I am, or my proposals. In terms of them, they actually did not have any input on my work whatsoever. I was pretty much just, you were awarded it and you're allowed the freedom to do as you wish here.
Well, my input is that your work is pretty strong. And with that note, les agradezco a todos estar aquí. Les agradezco a Katrina, O'Neill y Albertine ser también mis partners in crime, being emphatical on crime. Y a ustedes, señores, muchísimas gracias por su tiempo. Seguimos hablando, vamos a estar aquí. Esto es una plataforma de diálogo, vamos a seguirlo haciendo. Los veo mañana en la próxima trama y parcela, que va a ser nuestra última. Por favor, aprovéchenla. Bye, bye.